I want to tell you a story not to shock you, not to ask for pity, but to remind us all of something deeply human. In a place most of us only hear about through headlines and statistics, I met a family who redefined for me what strength, hope, and love really mean. This Muslim family in Gaza changed my heart forever. When I first sat down with the father of the family, I had no idea what I was walking into. The air was dry, heavy with dust, and behind him, the remnants of a home now lived in memory more than structure. Yet, there was something about his posture, his eyes focused, steady, unshaken, that pulled me in. He didn't have much, but what he had, he held with dignity. And when I asked him how he wakes up every day in a place so battered, with so many reasons to give up, his answer was quiet but firm: because my children are watching. That sentence landed like a stone in my chest. Not a complaint, not a political statement, just raw, purposeful clarity. He wasn't surviving because he had no other choice. He was surviving because he had a reason to. A reason that went beyond himself. A reason that rooted itself in love, legacy, and responsibility. He explained how every day, no matter how unstable things became, he made it a point to sit with his children, ask them about their dreams, remind them to treat others with kindness. He told me, "They can destroy the walls around us, but they can't touch the values I teach my children." That was his mission. That was his why. It wasn't about fighting the world, it was about building people, even in the rubble. We often think of purpose as something tied to our career, our passions, or our goals. But in this man's world, purpose had a different face. It wasn't about ambition, it was about intention. He had stripped life down to its most essential truth. When the world feels unstable, your purpose becomes your anchor. And in that anchor, you find strength you didn't know you had. He shared a story about a night when the bombs were so close, the ground shook under them. His youngest son, barely 6 years old, cried out in fear. He said he held him close, whispered prayers into his ear, and then told him, "You are braver than this moment." He wasn't trying to lie to his son or minimize the terror. They were surrounded by it. But even in that chaos, he chose to plant seeds of resilience, not despair. That's when it hit me. Purpose isn't some distant, polished idea you discover after everything settles. It's the thing you hold on to in the middle of the storm. It's not about avoiding pain. It's about choosing what you stand for, even while you're in it. This man had no resources, no certainty, no idea what tomorrow would bring. But he had a why, and that why gave him power. It gave him patience. It gave him the ability to lead his family not just through crisis, but through character. That's what real leadership is. It's not about control, it's about conviction. It's about showing up, not just because you have to, but because someone is watching, someone is learning from how you move through adversity. What struck me most is that he never once called himself a leader, but he was leading in the most profound way possible. He was teaching his children that even in a broken world, you can choose not to break. That even when your circumstances are taken from you, your values are yours to protect. And I walked away realizing something I'll never forget. The most powerful people in this world are often the ones we never hear about. The ones who lead not with speeches, but with sacrifice. The ones who don't ask for recognition because their purpose isn't for show. It's for the people they love. And when you have a reason like that, when you know your why, you can survive anything. You can build something beautiful, even in the ruins. I didn't expect to be invited in. I was just passing by, just another face walking through a place carrying more loss than most of us can comprehend. But there she was, the mother standing outside what remained of their home, motioning for me to come closer. No words at first, just a gentle smile and an open hand. A gesture so simple, yet it felt like the world cracked open a little. They had nothing to spare, and yet they shared everything. Inside, the space was barely held together by tarps and salvaged wood, but there was warmth, not from the cold, not in that physical sense, but from something deeper, something human. They made room for me on a thin mat, poured tea into chipped glasses, and asked me about me. Not about why I was there, not where I was from, just, how are you today? That question, in that place, broke me. Because trust doesn't begin in grand gestures. It doesn't rise from declarations or promises. Trust is built in the quiet, unspoken moments. It's built when someone chooses to see you, not just your presence, not your purpose, but your personhood. They didn't know my beliefs. They didn't ask about my background. They simply opened their door, what little of it remained, and treated me like family. Not because they knew me, but because they chose to welcome me. That choice, that act of unguarded generosity, taught me more about trust than any leadership book or seminar ever could. In the West, we often talk about trust in terms of contracts, systems, structures, things that can be written, signed, sealed. But in that small space in Gaza, I learned that trust is much simpler and much harder. It's not about guarantees. It's about moments. The ones where someone chooses kindness when they have every reason not to. The father, quietly sitting beside me, offered me bread. It was fresh, clearly hard to come by, and he handed it to me without hesitation. I hesitated, not out of politeness, but because I felt unworthy. How could someone with so little offer so much? He smiled gently and said, "It's not about what we have, it's about who we are." That sentence, that single moment, true wired something inside me. We build walls around our hearts, especially when we feel like the world is too much. And sometimes those walls feel necessary. But what this family showed me is that trust isn't about waiting until things feel safe. It's about choosing to be real with each other, even when it doesn't. Every small act, sharing tea, asking a question, offering a seat, was like a brick in the foundation of trust. And these bricks weren't loud. They weren't performative. They were genuine, intentional, honest. By the time I left, I didn't just feel grateful. I felt seen. And more than that, I realized they trusted me first. That's the secret. That's the part we don't talk about enough. The courage it takes to trust someone without knowing if they'll return it. That's what they did. Not because they were naive, but because they were strong enough to lead with humanity. It's easy to build walls. It's hard to build trust. But it's the only thing that holds when everything else falls apart. And sometimes, all it takes is one small monotone cup of tea, one warm glance, one honest question to start building something unshakable between two human beings who might have otherwise passed each other by. The room was small, the kind of space where every movement feels close, every breath shared. There were no fancy seats, no polished furniture, just cushions on the floor and soft murmurs between family members. The kind of quiet where you feel more than you hear. I was sitting across from the mother, a woman whose eyes carried the weight of too many goodbyes. And yet, as she handed me a small glass of tea, she asked something that made time stop. Not out of politeness, not out of habit, but with real concern. Genuine solace. That question, from a woman who had lost her home, who had lived through fear I couldn't begin to understand, wasn't just unexpected, it was transformative. In that moment, I realized something profound. Empathy is not a reaction to ease. It is a choice made in the middle of pain. It is not weakness. It is the strongest, most courageous act a person can make when they have every reason to close off, to shut down, to protect themselves. But she didn't. She opened her heart instead. There's a kind of strength the world doesn't always celebrate. It's not the loud kind. It doesn't walk into a room demanding attention. It doesn't need to prove itself. It's the kind that simply sits beside someone and listens. The kind that still sees others even when it's in pieces. That's empathy. And in that home, I witnessed it in its purest, most powerful form. Her story wasn't told through complaints or bitterness. It unfolded through the way she held her child close while speaking to me, the way she made sure everyone in the room had food before she even touched her own, the way she leaned forward when I spoke as if my words mattered in a place full of louder tragedies. Empathy, I've learned, isn't about fixing anything. It's about being with someone in it. It's about saying, I see you, even when I am hurting too. That kind of presence, son, that doesn't need to solve, but chooses to understand that strength. We live in a world where it's easier to shut off, to scroll past, to disconnect, to label. But this woman, in one of the most unstable, heartbreaking corners of the earth, chose the harder thing. She chose connection. She chose care. Her children mirrored that too. One of her daughters, maybe 10 years old, noticed my shoelace was torn. She disappeared for a moment and came back with a scrap of fabric to tie it together. She didn't say anything, just knelt down and tied it. In a world where her own life was uncertain, she chose to make someone else's day a little easier, a little lighter. Empathy doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require having all the right words. It just requires presence. And in a place where the world had given them every reason to shut their hearts, this family chose to keep theirs open. That's not just admirable, it's revolutionary. So often we define strength by resilience, by what we can endure. But what if real strength is how soft we can remain in a hard world? What if it's the way we continue to care, even when we ourselves are broken? What if strength is simply choosing to say, I still believe in kindness, even when kindness feels forgotten? That family, especially the mother, taught me that strength isn't just about surviving the storm. It's about keeping your heart open while you do. I remember the moment so clearly, two children sitting on a broken concrete step, legs swinging, drawing pictures on scraps of cardboard with tiny stubs of charcoal. The world around them was cracked and crumbling, but they were creating something. Quietly, intentionally, joyfully. One had drawn a tree, the other had drawn a house with windows and birds flying above it. I asked what it was. The boy looked up, grinned, and said, This is where we're going to live when everything is better. He said it like it was already true, like he could see it, feel it, believe it even when everything around him said otherwise. And that's when I understood something I had never fully grasped before. Hope isn't just a warm feeling we wait for. It's a decision, a deliberate, defiant choice. In Gaza, where destruction touches nearly every corner, where normalcy has been redefined 100 times over, hope isn't passive. It's not some vague wish or a naive dream. It's active. It's work. It's something people wake up and decide to carry, even when it's heavy, especially when it's heavy. This family had every reason to surrender, to despair. They had lost their home, their neighbors, their sense of safety, but they had not lost their vision. And that's what struck me most. They still talked about tomorrow. Not with bitterness, not even with desperation, but with belief. A steady, quiet belief that things could be better, that life could still stretch beyond the fences, beyond the headlines, beyond the war. The father told me, hope is how we stay alive. If we lose that, we lose everything. And I believed him, because he wasn't just talking about surviving, he was talking about living, raising his children to look past the smoke, to see a horizon beyond the rubble. He wasn't shielding them from reality, he was teaching them how to hold both truth and possibility at the same time. That's not delusion, that's courage. And the more I sat with them, the more I realized how much energy it takes to hope when the world is constantly testing you. It's not easy, it's not automatic, it's not the absence of fear or grief. It's something much deeper. Hope for them was an act of resistance, a refusal to let darkness write the end of their story. Even in the smallest things, the way the mother planted herbs in cracked plastic bottles, the way the children played games with pebbles and laughter, they were choosing hope over and over, day after telling a story, singing a song, offering a smile. It's forged in the quiet moments when no one is watching and everything hurts, but you choose to believe anyway. What I saw in that family wasn't blind optimism. It was fierce, intentional hope, the kind that doesn't deny the pain, but stands beside it and says, you don't get the final word. They taught me that hope doesn't float in on the breeze. It's built like a wall made of hands, like a bridge made of words, like a fire that needs tending. It's something we choose again and again, even when it flickers, especially when it flickers. So now, when I feel overwhelmed, when the world feels too far gone, I think of that boy and his drawing, that little house, those birds in the sky. Before I left, the father walked me to the edge of the camp. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the broken streets and tents. He didn't say much, just walked slowly, calmly, hands behind his back, as if he were guiding me through a palace rather than a place shattered by conflict. As we reached the road, he turned to me and said, "We don't know how long we'll be here, but I know what I'm building." I asked him what that meant. He looked toward his children, playing in the dust, and said, "I'm building people. That's my legacy." So often, when we talk about legacy, we think in terms of buildings, businesses, achievements, wealth, or recognition. But in that moment, I realized that none of those things mean anything when the world is on fire. What truly lasts, what truly matters is how we make people feel, what we pass down when we have nothing material left to give. And this man, with no resources, no certainty, no guarantees, was leaving behind something unshakable: love, dignity, and values that would live on through his children. Legacy isn't always loud. It doesn't always come with applause or medals. Sometimes it looks like a mother brushing the dust out of her daughter's hair with her fingers because there's no comb. Sometimes it's a father kneeling to help his son recite a prayer, not because the world is calm, but because he wants his son to have peace within it. Sometimes it's in the way a family chooses to stay kind, to remain generous, even when they are surrounded by loss. This family was teaching me without saying so directly that legacy is created in who you lift while you are still standing. Who you give your strength to, who you choose to invest in with your time, your patience, your belief. Even if no one sees it, even if the world doesn't write it down. I watched the oldest daughter help her younger siblings prepare food over a tiny stove, gently explaining each step, laughing softly with them. She had learned that from her mother. Not just how to cook, but how to care, how to teach. That's legacy. It isn't just memory, it's motion. It's something passed from hand to hand, heart to heart, through example, not just instruction. Their legacy wasn't in what they owned, it was in who they were, in the way they made me feel seen, in the way they created beauty in a place where the world had stolen so much, in the way they reminded me that what you give to others in love, in kindness, in truth, is the only thing that ever really lasts. And here's what truly struck me. They didn't see themselves as extraordinary. They weren't trying to make a statement or prove a point. Every lesson whispered at bedtime was a brick in a foundation that would carry far beyond the borders of that camp. That's the kind of legacy that survives war, that outlives poverty, that transcends geography. It's the kind of legacy that leaves a mark on souls, a legacy rather than lingers. As I walked away, I realized they had given me something I hadn't even known I needed. The reminder that we're all building a legacy, every single day. Not with what we leave behind, but with who we raise, who we help, who we choose to love better even when life makes it hard. That Muslim family in Gaza may never know how deeply they changed me, but their legacy lives on in my heart, in my choices, in the way I now walk through the world. So today, I invite you to rethink what strength looks like, what leadership feels like, and what legacy means. Because sometimes the people who have the least to give the most. And sometimes the ones who change us forever are the ones we never expected to meet. This Muslim family in Gaza changed my heart forever, not by what they had, but by who they chose to be. And that, my friends, is the kind of story worth sharing.